All right, so we're here with Darin Smith. Darin's a Republican running for U.S. House of Representatives. Welcome, Darin. Glad to have you here with us today.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
I'm Ryan Martin. I'm the managing editor here at the Wyoming Tribune Eagle.
I'm Sharon Fain with Black House Energy.
Bob Feck, Shine Animal Shelter.
Again, Darin, welcome. We're glad to have you here. If you'll just start off by telling us what specific issues or concerns got you into the race for U.S. House this year.
Well, sure. I think there are lots of issues that got me into the race. Bottom line is I'm sick and tired of politics as usual. And I look at my children and I see what's happening in Washington, D.C. And I don't think that they'll have the same America that I had. I don't know that they'll have the same future that I had unless we make some serious changes. I believe that the train has jumped the tracks and we're headed for a cliff. We're headed for a fiscal cliff, and we have a Greece-like day of reckoning in the not so distant future. I don't think you need a PhD in math to know that.
What qualifications do you bring to the table that you will help you serve as a congressperson?
Well, I believe that there are lots of people in the race with various backgrounds, but what stands me apart is that I have a serious executive experience outside of government. And do you want me to go into detail on
Yes,
that?
please.
Sure. I work for a national nonprofit organization that drills about 1,000 water wells a year for people without fresh water all over the world. We send doctors on about 1,000 medical missions a year for people that in need of medical help. My role in that is I supervise a team of 15 professionals, and our job is to go out and first we find the opportunities, and then we go and present the opportunities to people that might be able to fund those projects. So I've traveled all over the world, and I have become an expert in finding simple solutions to complex problems. I also am very gifted at putting the right people on the right seats on the bus, which is crucial if you are going to be executive. You have to know what people's skills are, and you have to identify the problem. Then you have to identify your team, their skills, and how to best implement their skills into what you're trying to accomplish. And so I meet that in full force. So,
what do you believe is the biggest challenge facing the nation right now?
Well, I don't even know where you'd start with that. It has to be the debt. It has to be our debt. If you look at I believe what I would call the federal corruption in Washington, D.C., 5 of the 6 richest counties in the country surround Washington, D.C. Thomas Jefferson put it best: the problem with democracy is people figure out they can vote themselves a raise, and that's exactly what they do. If you look at Washington, D.C. right now, there are over 35,000 bureaucratic attorneys. These are not attorneys that actually litigate something like in Cheyenne or do DUIs or divorces. These are attorneys that just work for the federal bureaucracy, and they have a better chance of dying on the job than they do of being fired for incompetence. And we've got to fix that. We've got to go with at-will employment for federal employees. But we have a ton of issues as it revolves around the what I would call corruption in Washington. For example, and I've spoke about this on the campaign trail, Congress, the average congressperson has a net worth of over $1 million. And that's even with the fact there's a congressman in California that has a net worth of a negative $50 million. But so they have an average net worth of over $1 million. And they get a Social Security check, and they also get a federal pension plan. I think it is immoral. I think it is unconscionable that they would get a federal pension plan. And I think that is a part of the problem. You see, we have to put congressional eyes on the right issues. For example, we know that Social Security is going broke. We know actually it's already broke. More money goes out for Social Security checks than comes in Social Security payments. That's been that case since 2009. So how do we fix that? Well, let's put congressional eyes strictly on Social Security. And how do we do that? We eliminate federal pension plans for congressmen. I will not be taking a federal pension plan, but let's also implement job performance standards. Brian, and what I mean by that is if you don't do your job well, then you either make less money, you get demoted, or you get fired. If you're a business person and you don't do your job well, you either make less money or you go out of business. Well, how come at the federal level that is not the case? It's not the case for federal employees, and it's certainly not the case for congressional members. So the main job of a legislator is to go back there and piece out the resources and balance a budget. And they're not doing that. In fact, the last balanced budget we had was in the late 90s. So what we need to do is we need to have every year that Congress goes back and they don't balance a budget, every member of that Congress should have a pay reduction of 10%. And these are bipartisan issues that I'm talking about. I believe that the constituents of every district, whether it be Wyoming or the Northeast or even Nancy Pelosi's district, I believe these are bipartisan issues, and we can get these things passed, and we can start addressing this federal corruption. And yes, is there any one person that's corrupt? Not necessarily. It's just a systemic problem that we've got to fix, and we need people to go back there. And people say, well, you've never actually been in government. That is absolutely true. But that is exactly why I should go back, because I am a winner in the real world. And we need winners, people who have actually done something with their lives, to go back, not people who've been trained in the art of political can kicking, or folks who maybe have been in politics a very long time, or who claim to have had a national platform that haven't ever accomplished anything. I have accomplished a ton. I have a record to show that. And also, if you haven't noticed, my signs are popping up everywhere where I've lived. That's because people know me, they respect me, and we're getting lots of traction, and I have a plan to win this election.
Darin, how do you, can I follow up on that? How do you avoid becoming corrupted by the system once you get there? Because a lot of people will say exactly what you've said before they get elected the first time, but once they get to DC, it all changes. How would you keep from becoming corrupted?
Well, it all boils down to integrity. And you have to elect people that have integrity, that have a track record of maintaining their integrity their entire life. And I call it, well, I've heard it called, this is not my phrase, but it's the Potomac fever. You're absolutely right. People go back there and they become more concerned with getting on the right committee or being liked by their peers, and they don't represent the people of Wyoming. And so I say to the people of Wyoming, if I do not do what I say I'm going to do, then fire me. But I will do what I say I'm going to do, and you're going to love me. And I also believe in term limits. And I don't believe that anybody should serve in the House for more than 8 years. Lots of state legislatures have done that. We term limit our own president. Why wouldn't we term limit such important positions? Because there's sort of some sort of systemic corruption that takes place when people are able to stay back there for 15, 20, 30 years. And they say, well, we need that because the politicians will have a disadvantage to the bureaucracy if that happens. Well, what we need to do is, and the federal bureaucracy, have at-will employment. We need to have a serious checks and balance system. And I think the second biggest problem facing us is what I would call the fourth branch of government, which is the federal bureaucracy. We have unelected officials that are violating people's constitutional rights and acting in authority that is not granted to them. And people can rail on this, so I'll just be very pithy. You have the EPA that I believe has unfairly attacked coal. They have acted under the Clean Power Plant standards, which were never, those standards were actually, they come out of the UN, they come out of the Paris Treaty. They don't come from anything that Congress has enacted. I'm an environmentalist. I'm for a clean environment. I love the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act saved us from acid rain and all kinds of wonderful, all kinds of things that would have happened that we don't have now. We have a cleaner environment than we had in the 50s and the 40s, because in the 50s and the 40s, they were actually just dumping pollution into rivers and streams. And the Clean Air Act has been great, and we've had a lot of good things. But so we have overreach by the federal government. And that overreach, as I said, you've got the Clean Power Plan, which is, oh, by the way, have you ever noticed that all of a sudden everybody's railing on the war on coal? The war on coal was declared in 2008. And what was our plan? Ideas win. Ideas win, and just saying, hey, you guys are taking our jobs is just not going to be enough to fight this overregulation. We've got to fight them with better ideas, and I'll get to that later on. So then you've got also look, this Andy Johnson over in Lyman, which I'm sure you guys have heard, Mountain View, Lyman area. Here's a guy. He certainly wasn't near a navigable water. He built a stock pond, not a big stock pond. By his words, it was 30 or 40 feet long. It was about 12 feet deep at its deepest point. And Andy did everything according to the state regs, had his pond, and the EPA comes in and says, you got to remove it. We're going to fine you $16 million, basically the bottom line. And so he fights it and he wins. But they violated his constitutional rights. Not just Andy's, but everybody in the state of Wyoming, and we got to protect everybody in the state of Wyoming's rights. I've heard it say it's a win. I've heard people say that it's a win-win for Wyoming that this case was dropped. Well, no, it's a win for Andy, but it's still a lose for us, because what's to stop the next bureaucrat from overreaching in an unconstitutional manner? So we need to actually hold bureaucrats accountable to unconstitutional overreach. And Brian, a good way to do that would be to remove federal immunity for federal employees that willful and wantonly go after American citizens in violation of their constitutional rights. And I'm thinking of the EPA, but I'm also thinking of Lois Lerner and the IRS. You have a situation where we have a person who went after tens of thousands of honest American citizens who simply wanted to exercise their right to be in the political process. And what happened to Lois Lerner? She was called before Congress and she pled the Fifth Amendment, and then she retired with her federal pension. Nothing happened to her, and she's married to a DC attorney who makes millions of dollars a year, and she's living a life of luxury. So we got to deal with that is corruption at its absolute worst, and we need to fix that. And I've got fire in my belly. I'm a tenacious person and a fighter, and we're going to get those things fixed.
Darin, one of the public's biggest complaints about our national political process is that everything's become too partisan, that that's led to nothing getting done in Washington. How would you work across party lines to get bills passed to benefit your constituents back in Wyoming, and what else would you do?
Well, I've already outlined a couple things. We talked about federal pensions for congressional members. That's a bipartisan issue, and that starts at the top. And we job performance standards for Congress. That's a bipartisan issue. I think at-will employment at the federal level, I think that's a bipartisan issue as well. I think there are a lot of issues that we can find common ground on. The one thing that we cannot compromise on, and I think it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right, we cannot compromise on more debt. We just cannot do it. If people understand that if interest rates go up, then it really puts the amount of dollars that leave our budget, it increases the amount of money that we have to pay towards our interest payments significantly, and will have a serious effect on the United States' ability to function.
I want to follow up and have you expand a little bit more on the issue of bipartisanship, because there are issues that the people want Congress to deal with and that Congress needs to deal with, but it just seems like we are 50-50 right down the middle, entrenched, and the Democrats are not moving, the Republicans are not moving. There's very little reaching across the aisle to get something done. How would your approach be different?
Like what? Give me an example. You said like a 50-50 issue.
Well, I mean, the fact that we haven't passed a federal budget in this length of time, why has that not been done? Why are we entrenched on, we've got to keep this?
Well, elections,
yeah,
elections do matter. And if you look at 2012, I think the majority of people in this country elected a group of people that they thought were going to go back there and be fiscally responsible. And I believe that the members of our delegation here in Wyoming did their job for the most part and tried to get that done. However, on a national level, that didn't happen. And in fact, John Boehner, he compromised more with the president than I believe that the Democrats would have on the budget. So elections matter. I believe this is an important election cycle. I think that's why Donald Trump is gaining so much momentum and traction, is because people want to see something get done. I want to see something get done. And I think for the first time in a long time, we are going to have a president. And I believe Donald Trump will get elected, and I believe that he's a fiscally responsible man. And I like his fiscal policies, and we'll have a president to match a Congress to actually get some things done on that front. We have to. We do not have a lot of time. Our children will not have the same future that we have if we don't fix this. You cannot spend 40 cents on every dollar that you spend on borrowed money. No business can. No person in the state of Wyoming can do that. We've done that for decades, and maybe that 40 cent number might vary. That 40 cents every dollar might vary some, but I know it's been as high as approximately 40 cents in every dollar that has been spent in a fiscal budget on borrowed money for the United States government. We can't continue that.
Darin, how important is it for you to maintain your own voice and priorities rather than just voting the way party leaders would want you to vote?
We have absolutely the number one characteristic of anybody who goes back to Washington, D.C. needs to be integrity. That's what gets lost when you get past the Potomac. People seem to lose their integrity. They start to compromise. They start to say, well, if they get a good portion of what they want and I got a good portion of what I want, then that's a winner. They might say, I've heard it said that a particular politician for this state has said, well, I wouldn't say this to the people of Wyoming, but here's what I think. And by the way, that's not a current elected official. but we need people that will not compromise on what matters most. When I go back, I will be accountable to the citizens of the state of Wyoming. That's who I will represent. Of course, I want to be on the best committees. Of course, I want to be on the appropriations committee or the natural resource committee. However, I will not compromise who I am to be on those committees. I'd rather be if they stuck me in the janitorial closet, but I'm fighting for Wyoming issues. That's what matters. And if there are enough of us that get stuck in the closet, guess what? We don't become the closet, we become the majority. The Freedom Caucus, they were so vocal about Boehner's compromise on the budget. They were able to get him removed. And there are about 40 of them. And we can do the same thing. We just have to, everything lives and dies in leadership. Everything lives and dies in integrity, and integrity wins out in the long run.
We have a list of issues that we want you to address as a candidate, how you would prioritize them. The first one's military spending and protecting F.E. Warren Air Force Base. How important is that to keep the base's current mission, and what would you do to make that happen?
It's entirely imperative. The most important thing on our grill is national defense. Of course, we have so many threats worldwide, and our nuclear arsenal is probably the most important component of our defense strategy to keep this nation safe. We still have a Russia that we need to be concerned about. We still have radical Iran. We have North Korea with their nukes. We have all kinds of reasons that our nuclear arsenal in America is very important, and really this base here is key to that. We have about 150 ICBMs, and this country used to have several thousand. Now we just have about 500, I believe, in the continental United States, and it is imperative. It is imperative that we keep at least that number of ICBMs, and we'll fight for that. And it needs to stay right here in Cheyenne where it's at. So it's good for the country, and it's great for the Wyoming economy. It's great for Cheyenne, and we have just got to, in every way, we've got to support that base and support our military. And just to add to that, our military men and women have served this country, and they've done their part for our country, and we need to do our part for them in every single way. If there's not a question on the VA, I'd like to talk about that. Okay. We have got to allow our military, our service people, to get the best care possible, whether it's a voucher system, whether it's care at the VA, but we have got to give them the access that they need to the right medical care that they need. And over again, I hear that their access is not good enough. So we need to fix that. We need to continue to investigate the VA. We need to end the corruption that's taken place there. And we need to, I think, by somehow allowing vouchers to allow them to go into the free market with some of their care would be a monumental first step for our veterans.
You mentioned EPA overreach already, but can you talk about the importance of dealing with climate change and environmental threats, and how you would do that in Washington?
Sure. We have the Clean Air Act, which has been awesome. It has done so much for our environment. Our environment is in many ways cleaner today than it's been since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Let's continue. Technology continues to improve emissions, and we should continue along those lines. We should, but right now we have regulations that are intentionally formed so that they cannot be met, and we've got to fight that too. But really, we've got to shape the argument. And here's the argument that's been made. Our president in 2009, he stood before the UN the first Tuesday in September 2009, and he said, the greatest threat facing mankind is global warming. And I think Cheyenne had its second coldest winter on record. It was a cold winter all over the world. And so they changed the argument. Then later he comes out a year or two later, and he's like, the greatest threat facing mankind is climate change. Well, the climate is always changing, so now they can always shape the narrative to fit them. That is not a sound argument. The logic's not there. There's science on, there's good science on both sides for both arguments, and we need to be rational and reasonable, and we need to do what's right for our kids. Our environment is getting cleaner all the time, and it's technology. We need to use our fossil fuels. We need to use our fossil fuels because they give us the BTUs to have transportation, to have manufacturing, all these things that are essential to our life. This is important on that. The argument. So is the greatest threat facing mankind really climate change? What about Iran? What about Korea? What about all these things? I think that the greatest threat facing America, by the way, I'm a citizen of the United States, not of the world. And the greatest threat facing America is American energy independence. There's a little channel of water. I think it's less than, well, I know it's less than 10 miles wide in parts, and it's called the Straits of Hormuz. The Straits of Hormuz is between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Guess what? That's the greatest threat facing mankind because over 40% of all the oil that's consumed in the world goes through that little channel of water. The reason it's the greatest threat is this. If Iran shuts that channel down, which they could easily, all of a sudden the price of a barrel of oil in Wyoming and anywhere in the United States goes to over $200 a barrel. Here's where this gets interesting. We consume 19 million barrels of oil in the United States a day. Of that, 9 million barrels through 2015. These are accurate numbers, and they are to date. Through 2015, 9 million barrels a day come from foreign shores, from foreign countries. Of that, 30% of that oil is enemy oil, is OPEC oil, or countries that are sworn to our destruction. So we have literally 50, 60, 70 billion dollars a year that go into the hands of our enemies because we have not shaped the argument. The left has shaped the argument that it's just about climate change. No, it's about American energy independence. Now, the next question on that is, well, how do we shape that argument? Well, let's change it. Wyoming can lead the way in American energy independence. Wyoming has the natural resources the only way that we can actually become American energy independent is if we actually use natural gas as a component of our transportation. T-Boone Pickens is probably the first to say it, but I've talked to other energy experts. You've got Peter Walden Casper or Deemer True, or people that are experts in energy in this state that have agreed the only way that we can actually reduce the amount of oil that we import from foreign shores is to make natural gas a component of that. And here it just makes sense for Wyoming. So even a bad idea, if well executed, will succeed. And I can prove it with one word: ethanol. Ethanol is a terrible fuel source. It has 40% less BTUs. It's hard on engines, but they have great leadership in the Midwest. So they destroy a component of our food source to create a fuel that's subsidized to sell it back to us that we have to drive in our cars, and it's not good for our cars. So why can't Wyoming, who has the best fuel source out there, natural gas, and by the way, it's the cleanest fuel source that's going to give us the energy that we need, so we can beat the radical environmentalists at their own game. I actually created a website, and it's called GoCleanAmerica.com. And in this website, I sort of outline how Wyoming can lead the way in American energy independence and use natural gas as a component of that. And increased consumption of natural gas does what? Increase the price for natural gas, which increases the price of coal. And that's a big part of what's hurting coal right now is natural gas prices are so low, it's being undercut. So let's promote our own product, and we have a model for that. Has anybody heard of Greeley, Colorado, Weld County? Weld County actually has led the way, the nation on this, and they eat their own cooking. They have a lot of natural gas. Natural gas is important to them. So they have 6 natural gas stations throughout Weld County. All their county trucks, all their state trucks run on natural gas. And it's provided a way that people around the community can run on natural gas as well. So speaking of pushing our own product, we also have liquefied natural gas. Right now we have over 20 applications that have not been approved by the federal government for liquefied natural gas plants that would export. Europe will take all of the liquefied natural gas that we will produce because right now Putin has them up against the wall. And so we need to approve all of those liquefied natural gas plant applications yesterday, those that are legit. And we need to also figure out a way. There's a pipeline. I believe it's called the Jordan Pipeline out of Oregon that's coming this way. We can hook into different pipelines and export our natural gas in the form of liquefied natural gas as well.
Darin, before we move past this issue, can you just clarify what I believe I heard you say is that you don't believe that climate change is happening, or that that human beings are not having an influence on our climate? The climate just changes. Is that what you're saying, or am I misconstruing what you said?
I wouldn't say that I don't believe that man has an effect on the climate. Certainly could be. In fact, I think that under the models that have been put forth by the EPA, if they can reduce the amount of temperature increased by but if they do what they say they're going to do, then the temperature will not be increased by like a tenth of a degree or 2/10 of a degree over a couple of decades. So even by these radical environmentalists within the bureaucracy, even by their standards, we do not have much effect on the environment, in my opinion. When you look at CO2, one volcanic eruption, even a small volcano, will produce more CO2 into the atmosphere than man can produce in 10 years. So I just do not think that the logic is there or the science is there.
Can you talk to us a little bit about healthcare coverage and Obamacare and what you think should be done with the Affordable Care Act?
Sure. Well, I'll outline what's happened. Right now, we have a plan on the left to go to single payer system. They want to go to a one payer system for that the government takes care of. That's where they're headed. That's why we're in this mess. They have completely eliminated the ability to for us to buy healthcare plans outside of our own state. We have one healthcare provider, Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's insane. What's built the American economy has been competition. And we need to promote competition. Everything that succeeds has competition. And if we go to a single payer health system, we'll have even more problems than we have right now. Myself as a dad, as a family, I have 7 people in my family. If there's a better plan in Utah or Florida, I should be able to cross state lines to get that. Can you believe in America in the 21st century that I cannot cross state lines to go buy a health insurance plan? Why? Because they want to go to single payer. That's why they want to go to universal health care. That's what's happened in Canada. That's what's happened in England. If universal health care is so good, why are so many people from Canada come to the United States when they have real health problems for their health, for the healthcare needs? And the answer is that it's not the solution. Competition is always the solution. Competition is the solution for schools. It's the solution for healthcare. We've got to fight this. We cannot allow the people to be basically the people, in my opinion, are we're being oppressed under this current healthcare scheme. It's just not working.
So you would vote to repeal
Every single word of Obamacare must be repealed.
What's your plan for reducing the federal deficit? You mentioned earlier that we can't add to our debt, but what's your plan?
Well, I talked about some things. You've got to reform the head before you can reform anything else. If the head's on the ground, the body will be on the ground. If the head's erect, the body will be erect. I mean, even in your own organization, if you have good leadership, things run better. So it starts at Congress. And then once Congress is reformed in terms of their federal pensions and job performance, then let's go after, let's say, Social Security fraud. There are hundreds of thousands of checks that go out every single month to people who are no longer alive. That's a good first place to start. It would be nice if we could get a balanced budget amendment at the federal level. That'd be awesome, because then by law we'd be forced to live within our means at the federal level. And I've already talked about the bloated federal bureaucracy, at-will employment at the federal level. There are all kinds of things that need to happen. And also, if we can, government doesn't create jobs. Only the private sector creates jobs. So we have to have people that go back to Washington and understand the proper role of the federal government. And that role is limited in its regulation. It's limited in how it affects the free market. For example, healthcare, we just talked about that. If the government would get out of the way and quit making these crazy rules and allow people in the free market to move, then we would actually have increased commerce. We'd have increased industry, even in the healthcare sector. And that would just be a good example of what would happen. So we've got to, the people that create jobs are the people that are watching this video, that get up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning to work their business. And they go to bed early at 8 or 9 at night, because they're working their business and they're creating opportunities. They're seeing opportunities. And we need to get government out of their way so that they can actually continue to prosper.
Darin, how do you feel about the Endangered Species Act and what the federal government's been doing there?
Well, I think initially it was good, right? It was founded because of the bald eagle and the need to protect the bald eagle, and certainly it's done some things that are valuable. However, it has lost its value, and it's become a tool of the left wing. And you have I would say, for example, reintroducing the wolf and then not allowing the ranchers to protect their cattle, and the different asinine things that have gone along with that. We have most recent stuff that I've read is we have more wolves in North America, in the United States today than we've ever had, and which doesn't make any sense that we would do that. You have the sage grouse, which apparently there's data to suggest that the sage grouse, a bigger problem than drilling out there in western Wyoming is, I believe they're crows and ravens. They eat the eggs of the sage grouse, but yet people are not allowed to shoot those birds because they're protected too. At least they can't be shot. So you have all kinds of crazy things that are taking place, and really that goes back to probably more local control. If people at the local level who have a better understanding of what's taking place for the various species in the area, then we can have a better understanding of how to manage that. I think that that act in particular has run its course, and we need something different.
How would you go about finding funding for small airports like Cheyenne's?
Well, right now they currently get grants, federal dollars, right? I think you could even look at the federal gas tax for some of their funding. We have got to have air transportation, so that would be a priority, even if it is a losing proposition for us. We have got to be able to travel. The people of Wyoming are valuable to the world. I know that I travel extensively internationally, and in fact, the only city that I could live in and still live in Wyoming is Cheyenne, because I travel so much. So I understand the need wherever you live in Wyoming for air transportation. So we just have to find those dollars.
Do you fly out of Cheyenne?
No, I fly out of Denver.
And what's the obstacle to flying out of Cheyenne?
For me, I work for a nonprofit organization, and it's arguably one of, if not the most efficient organizations of its size in the world. And I just can't justify the price when I can drive down. It's a little inconvenient for me, but it benefits my organization. So my bottom line is doing what is right. And it goes back to, who do you want in office? You want somebody that has integrity.
How would you go about replacing abandoned mine land funds that are coming into the state?
Well, how do we replace them? We've got to get coal back up and running. That's the bottom line. And I've got a plan to do that. We got to get our coal trains moving. And that's the only thing that's, we've got by the way, the Department of Interior and the BLM, which have done away or put a moratorium on mining claims. We've got to remove that. We've got to allow them to sell those leases and extract our coal. But we have to increase the demand for coal. We've got to get our trains moving. We do that by Wyoming entering the battle for ideas and pushing American energy independence. That is a much bigger need for America than climate change. And people in California and New York, they do not care that we're losing jobs out here, but they do care about their national security. And that's the argument, and that's how it needs to be framed.
Sir, it's not that I disagree with you, but there are in states all across the country, they're closing their coal-fired power plants. I mean, you're not going to be able to go to Southern Illinois and make them reopen that plant so that they can use our coal. So how do we get more coal sold when there are places cutting back?
Well, they're cutting back because they're looking out, like Black Hills. They're looking out and they're saying, you know what? In 5 to 10 years, at the rate that we're going, they're going to ban the use of coal. So why would we use coal as a power source. So we need to make sure that they know that in the future they're going to be able to use that fuel source. And also, if we can increase the consumption of natural gas, increase the price of natural gas, then the free market will take care of coal consumption. Coal consumption will come back. But right now, I mean, if you're going to build a new power plant, why would you build a power plant fired by coal with the current position by this administration and the EPA? So we've got to reshape the argument, and we've got to assure power companies that if they build coal plants, that they'll be able to use that clean burning coal. In fact, our coal is the cleanest burning coal in the world. We should be exporting our coal as well all over the world. In fact, right now, we haven't been able to open up a port in Oregon or Washington. It's a violation of the Constitution. Our next president, and I believe that this will happen immediately, should force immediately through the Commerce Clause a port to open up in Washington, Oregon. Then it can go before the Supreme Court after it's opened up. But they say, oh, well, you don't understand coal dust. Well, did you guys know that there's a polymer? Well, of course you know this, Sharon, but they spray the coal trains when they fill the coal train car up. They spray it with a particular substance so that it actually holds all the coal in there. There's actually, if you look at our tracks, I think we should actually show videos of our coal tracks that head out of Wyoming. They're clean. There's no coal on those tracks because we do such a good job of handling that, and we just need to do a better job of promoting our product and explaining to people, especially those people in Oregon and Washington, that it's not going to affect their environment at all, but it'll affect their economy. It'll increase their economy significantly, and they've got some unemployment issues, especially at the Millennium Port in Washington State, and it would help them greatly if we were able to get our port there.
Darin, you already mentioned your support for Donald Trump on environmental or on economic issues, but can you talk about your feelings about the presidential candidates and why you think Donald Trump is the right candidate for president this year?
Sure. I think that we have,
or do you maybe, or
well,
do you
yeah,
have reservations about it?
I don't
shouldn't say that you wholeheartedly endorse it. What are your feelings?
Well, I really like Trump 2.0. I think that Donald Trump 1.0 has said some things that are inconsistent with my Wyoming values. However, Trump 2.0 supports everything that I support. I think he's pro God in the sense that he is for the constitutional right for people to worship God however they see fit, and that's how I feel. He's pro family. He believes in supporting he believes in supporting the traditional family, as I feel. He's pro business. He's pro coal, pro oil and gas. He's pro agriculture. He's for pulling back all the federal regulations, or not all, but the oppressive federal regulations. He's for our veterans. He's for upholding the Constitution. So yeah, I would definitely support. I do support Donald Trump in this race. I don't think that there's any question. I believe we have a fundamental. We have a question between the fundamental direction of our country. Do you believe in guaranteed outcomes, and the government should guarantee an outcome for you, or do you believe in freedom and opportunity, that you have God-given gifts, that you're to find with your life, and you're to go forth and figure out how you can best use those? So those are our two options. We also know this. We know that more government doesn't work. That model we have fought this for 100 years, and we're still fighting it. Socialism just doesn't work. It just won't. At the end of the day, when government gets too big, it crushes the golden goose, which is our free market, and then we have some serious problems. And right now, we're all feeling it. We're feeling it significantly, and that's why people are so upset that nothing has gotten done in the last 4 years. And so yeah, I would support Donald Trump, and I also I support his free market ideas, and I support his ideas in the Constitution.
One last question that we have, and then I'll open up to anything else you wanted to share. But what do you believe are the priorities for Wyoming's lone member of the U.S. House, and how would you make sure that your voice is heard among the 435 voices in Congress?
Well, the biggest priority is representing the people of Wyoming, and our biggest need right now is to fight for energy. See, Wyoming, we're the least regulated, most free, and I believe least taxed people on earth. I believe that Wyoming could be the center for energy for the entire West. I believe that we could be the manufacturing center the entire West. We've got manufacturing companies that are coming to Wyoming. There's High-Vis over in Laramie. By the way, they've endorsed me. Right now, they can manufacture they do sights and stuff for guns. And right now, they can manufacture cheaper in Wyoming than they can to have it done in China and sent here, because that's where the price of energy is, and that's where the freedom and opportunity in Wyoming has grown. We have it. We have the perfect package for an industrial renaissance right here in Wyoming. So the next congressman has got to push that. That has got to be number one on their agenda, and I will do that. And we'll see if we can change the narrative. If we can start forming an argument of how essential Wyoming's products are to America, then we will see a renaissance, and not just in energy, but also in manufacturing. So that's the greatest thing, the greatest need I believe that the next congressman for Wyoming shall face. Yeah, I'll be one of 435, but if I've only been a politician for 3 months, and I don't know, I think it's 12 days, and I've already got a plan. I've already got a plan that's better than anything else that's out there. There have been people there are people in this race that have had a national platform for 15 years, and go to their website. My plan is smoking. GoCleanAmerica.com is my website. And you guys are going to love me. The people of Wyoming are going to love me. In fact, they already do. That's why you're seeing my signs pop up all over the place. That's why everywhere I go. In Sheridan, I had nothing in Sheridan 2 weeks ago. Now my signs are everywhere. People are calling me like crazy because they want something different. And I have not said this before, but let's make Wyoming great again. And we can. We can lead the nation, and we will. We just need good leadership, and I'm your guy.
Thank you, Darin. Anything else you'd like to share with the group before we wrap up?
I think that was a good wrap up right there.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.